All right, we're in Leviticus chapter 7 and chapter 8. Again, we're dealing the first part in chapter 7, we're dealing with different sacrifices still. And then chapter 8, we're dealing with how to ordain Aaron and his sons as priests and what God expects. Now, I know that listening to all this can seem really dull and unimportant, but God is setting the stage for his people and how to worship him, how God expects them to live, and the how important it is to pay attention when we make mistakes and when we falter. So let's go ahead and jump into chapter 7. Here we go. The sacrifice to make things right is very sacred. The animal must be killed in the same place where the sacrifice to please me is killed, and the animal's blood must be splattered against the four sides of the bronze altar. Offer all of the animal's fat, including the fat on its tail and on its insides, as well as the lower part of the liver and the two kidneys with their fat. One of the priests will lay these pieces on the altar and send them up in smoke to me. This sacrifice for making things right is very holy. Only the priest may eat it, and they must eat it in a holy place. The ceremony for this sacrifice and the one for sin are just alike, and the meat may be eaten only by the priest who performs the ceremony of forgiveness. In fact, the priest who offers a sacrifice to please me may keep the skin of the animal, just as he may eat the bread from a sacrifice to give thanks to me. All other grain sacrifices, with or without olive oil in them, are to be divided equally among the priests of Aaron's family. Here are the instructions for offering a sacrifice to ask my blessing. If you offer it to give thanks, you must offer some bread together with it. Use the finest flour to make 3 kinds of bread without yeast, 2 in the form of loaves mixed with olive oil, 1 in the form of thin wafers brushed with oil. You must also make some bread with yeast. Give me 1 loaf or wafer from each of these 4 kinds of bread, after which they will belong to the priest who splattered the blood against the bronze altar. When you offer an animal to ask a blessing from me or to thank me, the meat belongs to you, but it must be eaten the same day. It is different with the sacrifices you offer to make me a promise or voluntarily give me something. The meat from those sacrifices may be kept and eaten the next day, but any that is left must be destroyed. If you eat any after the second day, your sacrifice will be useless and unacceptable, and you will be both disgusting and guilty. Don't eat any of the meat that touches something unclean. Instead, burn it. The rest of the meat may be eaten by anyone who is clean and acceptable to me. But don't eat any of this meat if you have become unclean by touching something unclean from a human or an animal or from any other creature. If you do, you will no longer belong to the community of Israel. The Lord told Moses to say to the people, don't eat the fat of cattle, sheep, or goats. If one of your animals dies or is killed by some wild animal, you may do anything with its fat except eat it. If you eat the fat of an animal that can be used as a sacrifice to me, you will no longer belong to the community of Israel. No matter where you live, you must not eat the blood of any bird or animal. You will no longer belong to the community of Israel. The Lord also told Moses to say to the people of Israel, if you want to offer a sacrifice to ask my blessing, you must bring the part to be burned and lay it on the bronze altar. But you must first lift up the choice ribs with their fat to show that the offering is dedicated to me. A priest from Aaron's family will then send the fat up in smoke, but the ribs belong to the priests. The upper joint of the right hind leg is for the priest who offers the blood and the fat of the animal. I have decided that the people of Israel must always give the choice ribs in the upper joint of the right hind leg to Aaron's descendants who have been ordained as priests to serve me. This law will never change. I am the Lord. These are the ceremonies for sacrifices to please the Lord, to give him thanks, and to ask his blessing or his forgiveness, as well as the ceremonies for those sacrifices that demand a payment for the sacrifices that are offered when priests are ordained. While Moses and the people of Israel were in the desert at Mount Sinai, the Lord commanded them to start offering these sacrifices. Chapter 8, the Lord said to Moses, "Send for Aaron and his sons, as well as their priestly clothes, the oil for ordination, the bull for the sin offering, the 2 rams, and a basket of bread made without yeast. Then bring the whole community of Israel together at the entrance of the sacred tent." Moses obeyed the Lord, and when everyone had come together, he said, "We are here to follow the Lord's instructions." After Moses told Aaron and his sons to step forward, he had them wash themselves. He put the priestly shirt on and robe on Aaron and wrapped a sash around his waist. Then he put the sacred vest on Aaron and fastened it with the finely woven belt. Next, he put on Aaron the sacred breastplate that was used in learning what the Lord wanted his people to do. He placed the turban on Aaron's head, and on the front of the turban was the narrow strip of thin gold as a sign of his dedication to the Lord. Moses then dedicated the sacred tent and everything in it to the Lord by sprinkling them with some of the oil for ordination. He sprinkled the bronze altar 7 times, and he sprinkled its equipment, as well as the large bronze bowl and its base. He also poured some of the oil on Aaron's head to dedicate him to the Lord. At last, Moses dressed Aaron's sons in their shirts, then tied sashes around them and put special caps on them, just as the Lord had commanded. Moses led out the bull that was to be sacrificed for sin, and Aaron and his sons laid their hands on its head. After it was killed, Moses dipped a finger in the blood and smeared some of it on each of the 4 corners of the bronze altar before pouring out the rest at the foot of the altar. This purified the altar and made it a fit place for offering the sacrifice for sin. Moses then took the fat on the bull's insides, as well as the lower part of the liver and the 2 kidneys with their fat, and sent them up in smoke on the altar fire. Finally, he took the skin and the flesh of the bull, together with the food still in its stomach, and burned them outside the camp, just as the Lord had commanded. Moses led out the ram for the sacrifice to please the Lord. After Aaron and his sons had laid their hands on its head, Moses killed the ram and splattered its blood against the 4 sides of the altar. Moses had the animal cut up, and he washed its insides and hind legs, and then he laid the head and the fat and the rest of the ram on the altar and sent them up in smoke with a smell that pleased the Lord. All this was done just as the Lord had commanded. Moses led out the ram for the ceremony of ordination. Aaron and his sons laid their hands on its head, and it was killed. Moses smeared some of its blood on Aaron's right earlobe, some on his right thumb, and some on the big toe of his right foot. Moses did the same thing for Aaron's sons before splattering the rest of the blood against the 4 sides of the altar. He took the animal's fat tail, the fat on its insides, and the lower part of the liver and the 2 kidneys with their fat and the right hind leg. Then he took from the basket some of each of the 3 kinds of bread that had been made without yeast and had been dedicated to the Lord. Moses placed the bread on top of the meat and gave it all to Aaron and his sons, who lifted it up to show that he was dedicated to the Lord. After this, Moses placed it on the fires of the altar and sent it up in smoke with a smell that pleased the Lord. This was part of the ordination ceremony. Moses lifted up the choice ribs of the ram to show that they were dedicated to the Lord. This was the part that the Lord had said Moses could have. Finally, Moses sprinkled the priestly clothes of Aaron and his sons with some of the oil for ordination, with some of the blood from the altar. So Aaron and his sons, together with their priestly clothes, were dedicated to the Lord. Moses said to Aaron and his sons, "The Lord told me that you must boil this meat at the entrance to the sacred tent and eat it there with the bread. Burn what is left over and stay near the entrance to the sacred tent until the ordination ceremony ends 7 days from now. We have obeyed the Lord in everything that He has done that has been done today, so that your sins may be forgiven. The Lord has told me that you must stay near the entrance to the tent for 7 days and nights, or else you will die." Aaron and his sons obeyed everything the Lord had told Moses that they must do. And so we see that they're following God to the T, to the letter, all the way. And it's going to be an example for us today as in the future. I hope you have a great day.